Tink middle. 0 likes. I understand completely. I am having doubt about whether or not my own husband of nearly 5 years will be able to get clean. I am having a tough time dealing with my feelings, while still giving him the benefit of the doubt. Everyone is all yay, he's gonna go to some meetings. And I'm over here like, I've been begging him to get help for 2 years. He denied he had a problem. Now, you want me to pat him on the back for finally getting help after the 4th time I threatened to leave? Growl. In shock middle. 0 likes. I have told him so many times that I would try to support him and understand him. But every time he lies and goes back on and lies to my face that he is not using. I have given him as many chances as I can. I found out that he has been online for 6 to 8 hours a day. Tink middle. 0 likes. Mine too. I don't know how to deal. In shock middle. 0 likes. I had a private session with our couples therapist this morning. She made me think about what I want the story of my life to be. I cannot continue to live with the trauma of the day-to-day suspicion, the despicable lies. Right now he is saying everything he is supposed to, everything he thinks that I want to hear. It sounds perfect. He is even going to NSA tonight, first time ever, even though I have asked before. I don't believe any of it. I am seeing clearly. I wouldn't treat anybody the way he has treated me. Yet he loves me with all his heart. I don't want to look back over another 7 years of this knowing I had an out. Brenda middle. 0 likes. I just read all the painful experiences here and I just want to disappear from the face of the earth. I am a recovering sex addict and I am the wife. My husband has been loyal to me. He hasn't found out yet, but like all of the above comments, I am the same, in my case multiple affairs. I caught STDs. I have been cheating for 4 years now and I just need to stop and seek help here. It all started with phone sex, then webcam sex, then chatting on the phone, then meeting for dates, then finally having sex with multiple men. I have my reasons at first, but I realized it's an addiction now. I have destroyed myself, my brain circuits and my marriage. I am deeply sorry for my husband. Each day is a struggle as to not check on Craigslist or talk to an ex. Jai middle. 0 likes. Help. I do not know what to do. My husband has been on porn for several years and then progressed to an affair. He was also having cyber sex with foreign girls through chats. The discovery was 3 years ago, which he denied and then came clean and promised it would never happen again, nor would the porn. He refused to get couples therapy. The excuse for the porn was I felt sorry for myself and the was either my fault or they pursued him. One day he said that it was exciting because it was wrong. He is back on the porn again and has been for some time. It is the really bad stuff. I am going crazy as I broke into yet another email of his and found that he has signed up on dating sites and fling sites as someone other than himself. What do I do? I do love him. I know it is a disease, but where do I begin to get him to help himself? Confront him? Threaten to leave? When he is good, he is an awesome person. And yes, I have been in denial. I read out of the shadows yesterday and I am also in shock. Doesn't help that my father was a stage 3 sex addict. Emily middle. 0 likes. Several months ago my husband revealed that he had fallen back into watching pornography. I had always known he struggled with it before we got married, but he stopped when we were engaged. Our 1-year anniversary is this week. Once he started watching it again, it got out of hand and he ended up have sexual contact with a stranger at his work. An added layer of distress to all of this is the fact that he is addicted to homosexual pornography and the encounter was with a man. He suffered a lot of abuse from his older brother when he was a child and the first pornography he ever stumbled upon was gay. So there are a lot of seemingly rational explanations for it. It's just painful and confusing. I've read a lot of stories about partners of sex addicts, but very few have a husband who struggles with same-sex attraction. My husband and I are in counseling together and individually, and he goes to every morning. But he slipped up and looked at porn again last weekend. I'm so hurt and confused. I don't know how to respond or handle all of this. I feel very alone in this. K.L middle. 0 likes. I need help. I have been married to a sex addict for 3 years, we have been together for 6 years and have 3 young children. I first had signs that something was wrong when I found out 3 years ago he was compulsively masturbating to really extreme pornography, some of which is illegal. I was shocked, disgusted, and 7 months pregnant with our first child. He showed extreme remorse, and promised me he would stop. As I had no job and was pregnant, I didn't feel I had any other choice but to stay with him. I started monitoring his computer, but he still kept viewing pornography, just less bad stuff, and it killed me every time. Every single time I found it, I felt sick and would throw up. I was terrified. Fast forward a few months and he is in the military and a few states away. I no longer have access to his computer, but I see some phone records showing he is texting a strange number. I find out from the girl, a girl in the military with him, that they had been sexting for a few weeks, but they both swore up and down it was nothing more. Again, I forgave him and for some reason decided it was a good idea to pack my kid up and leave my life at home to follow him to another country in the military. When I got there, I knew something was wrong. He barely talked to me. He never addressed my needs emotionally. I was homesick, depressed, and stuck in the house with a young toddler with no car and no friends. I had no idea what was going on at the time, but later I found out he was going to strip clubs frequently and spending hundreds of dollars on lap dances while I barely had enough money to survive. I later found out he was also going to prostitutes during this time. He admitted to once, but I'm sure it was more than that. There was literally a brothel within 10 minutes from our house since prostitution is legal in the country we were in. He was also back to looking at the extreme pornography. Stupidly, I was no on birth control, so of course during this time I got pregnant again. That year was so hard, I cried daily. I felt so isolated and alone. He was never there for me emotionally, it was like he was checked out. He frequently emotionally abused me by calling me fat, crazy, and never allowed me to have any emotion or talk about anything. If ever I brought up anything bad that he was doing, he would always find a way to turn it back to me and blame me for his bad behavior. I nagged him, I was too sensitive, I needed to get off his back, I was acting crazy. I heard it all. I absorbed it and started believing that about myself. There was something wrong with me. I started taking antidepressants. Nothing worked. He even berated my friends and started isolating me from family also, by speaking badly of them and convincing me I shouldn't talk to any of them. Our daughter was born. 2 weeks after she was born, I found the most horrendous pornography all over his computer. I wasn't even looking for it, the website he was on was just there. I felt dead. I wanted to die. He came home and I literally started beating him over the head with my arms. How could you do this to me? How could you? We found out a week later that he would be leaving for a year on a deployment. So he left. I had a mental breakdown. I told him I wanted a divorce and would be leaving the country to go back home. I didn't feel my children were safe with him anymore. I felt crazy, I couldn't think straight through the pain. I ended up having my own affair during this time, and I never felt more alive. The man I had an affair with was extremely kind and emotionally available to support me. I had never felt that kind of connection with my husband. Eventually he came home. I was back home during this time. I found old stuff on his computer. He started his same old pornography routine. I randomly put a hidden tracker on his computer and caught him masturbating 3 times within 3 hours while he was watching our infant son. He admitted to doing this very frequently and also admitted to having multiple online dating accounts and talking to multiple women in the other country in the past year but never seeing any of them. I snooped through his bank account and found thousands of dollars of euro taken out of his account. He says it was all for the bar. I doubt it. I'm sure it was strippers or prostitutes. I kicked him out. Then, he finally sought therapy. I let him back in my house. He started going to a therapist weekly and to once a meeting. He says he has been sober now for 80 days. The problem is, I am heartbroken. I am devastated. He is still emotionally abusing me even though supposedly he is clean. He is completely unavailable emotionally to me. He will start a fight in order to walk out of the house. He refuses to talk to me about anything important. He barely talks to me at all about anything besides day-to-day things. If I am upset, if I tell him I feel lonely, nothing. Yesterday we had a huge blowout fight and I kicked him out again. When I told him I felt alone, he told me that it's my own fault. I make him treat me this way, so it's my fault I am alone. He is hiding behind his recovery, so that makes it so I am never able to talk about the sex addiction because then it's me shaming him and then that just makes the cycle worse. I think this time I am finally ready to get a divorce. I don't think I can do this anymore, even though I don't have the resources financially by myself. I feel like if I spend the rest of my life with him, I will be alone forever and ever. I will never have the emotional support from him. And in addition he will emotionally beat me down forever so that I never get strong enough to have a life without him. I'm sorry this is long, and I'm sure I left out a lot, but I need and want to hear some feedback. I feel so alone and isolated from everyone including friends and family because this is such a taboo thing to talk about. Please help. Tink0 likes. I can't even begin to list the similarities in our stories. And to be completely honest with you, I feel like I am screaming inside. My husband too was shamelessly flirtatious at the start, and it used to cause a lot of fights. His exes all hated me BC I ended up having to be the one who made sure there was no more contact. And then it became chatting up women in the bar after work, leading to him giving his cell number to one particular woman. When I finally confronted him, explaining that as his wife, I expected to be put before any other woman, and that included how he spoke. I was not okay with him calling other females darling or sweetie or whatever, and a man who was happily married would not be giving his phone number to random women in bars while his wife was waiting at home with their child for him. Then came the porn. His laptop is frequently used by both of us, and one day while I was downloading a TV series we watch, his email popped up showing a profile on hornyaffairs.com. I confronted him, and he lied to my face. So, while he went to run an errand, I logged into said account. I found 2 weeks' worth of emails back and forth to various other women, some containing pictures, from both him and those women. I confronted him second time, and when my tearful why was met with I don't know. And I was lonely, you're always so focused on our son. So, I asked him to leave for the night and give me some space. We spoke the next morning while kiddo was in school, and I told him that if it didn't stop, I would leave. He promised me it would, said all the right things. I agreed to give him more chances, saying 3 was the limit. I asked he disclose any other accounts or such, he said there were none. He said he put a block on his laptop to avoid temptation. I believed him. We went to Paris for a week shortly after with my in-laws, and to my knowledge things were getting better. Lo and behold, I found on his personal email more emails to more women, dated only about a month after we returned from Paris. He kept saying he just didn't know what they were. And, finally I snapped. I told him to wake up and realize he had a problem. And I couldn't go on any longer pretending things were fine. I feel dirty by association. I can barely stomach the idea of him touching me. But, part of me also believes that I can't leave, because I promised him for better or worse. And this is clearly the worse. Sue0 likes. It is so totally foreign to me to actually put a name on my husband's behavior. Although he doesn't fit all of the criteria for a sex addict, he definitely fits some of it perfectly. He was abused emotionally and physically as a child. He has always had a quick temper and anger issues but takes medication to control it. He started out by excessive flirting. Always flirting that has bothered me since the beginning of our marriage. He likes to hug women calling them baby and honey with me standing there. He thought it was just fine to have dinner and drinks with single co-workers and stay out as long as he wanted without contacting me. The attitude of I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. Everything was always my fault. My moods, my depression for his behavior. He always moved ahead of us when he was transferred, and I found text messages on his phone that he hadn't responded to. One in particular said, "I have the same thing on today that I had on last night." Why would a woman say that? For one reason only, but of course I fell for his lies and I got over it. Another day he came home like he had received a trophy because a waitress had written her number on his receipt. Then the 18-month EA with a co-worker 3 years ago. He said it was a thrill and he was moderately attracted to her. Really, what does moderately mean? All the lies and the trickle of information and the devastation. But we worked hard. Scratched and crawled our way back to what I believed was an incredible new marriage. He said and did everything right. He was the man I always dreamed of, but it was a lie. 6 weeks ago he started acting cocky again, red flag, so I looked at his email where I found a Craigslist conversation with a woman he asked to meet him somewhere. I couldn't believe it after all that work. Nothing but another lie. He said he was curious and he never would have met her. Today I don't feel the crushing blow I did after the 18-month disclosure, but I know it's coming. I feel angry that our relationship of 43 years has to be put through this agony. It is surreal at best because we actually have a loving marriage. He is my best friend and we spend pretty much all of our free time together. We enjoy each other's company, yet this thing is part of our lives. I feel crazy. I also feel like I have become someone I don't like. Managing his life and enforcing rules that we put in place together, like transparency. I feel like a bitch most of the time. His best friend hates me because I make my husband do what he says he will do. The best friend said, "How can you live with some like that?" I said, "Perhaps you should tell him why I am the way I am." He actually did call and tell him my behavior was his fault. I just want it to all go away. Maybe my life has always been nothing but a lie. We have raised 4 amazing children, so we must have done something right. He doesn't have a clue what he is or why he is. I believe he will do anything to make our marriage work. I think he is more afraid of losing me than me losing him, although I don't want to go. Love shouldn't be this hard. I am lost and so sad and angry. Next week his journey begins and I hope he can accept the truth. Emily Middle. 0 likes. Gosh, I don't know where to start. I discovered my husband's pornography stash on the computer a few months after we got married. Naively I thought it was a one-time thing. The problems and discoveries continued for 3 years. We had 3 kids during that time. It got worse. More deviant. Until it became a 24-hour addiction. He finally came clean to me that he was looking at porn on his phone every free minute of the day for months and months. On one website alone I found an account with thousands of favorited videos. Most of them incredibly violent, deviant, and just stomach-turning. After 3 years of promising to get help but doing absolutely nothing, I told him I wanted to leave. We were separated for 5 months and during that time he made a complete turnaround. Really just devoted his life to the Lord, and I saw immense improvement and commitment from him. I have had a great deal of healing myself, and since he came home 2 months ago our marriage has never been better. He still struggles a great deal, but it is his commitment to honesty that has made the biggest difference. However, in just the last 2 weeks he has relapsed numerous times. It is so hard to find this stuff all over again. And see that it is the same deviant, disgusting stuff. I am feeling so hopeless. He is always looking for porn with nuns and gang-banging priests, and he is obsessed with anal porn. I am just sick. I feel like he is possessed or something. Our family has always strived to be devout Catholics, so seeing that just scares me. Will he ever not fantasize about that? Or has this 20-plus year addiction completely rewired his brain so that he will never want just normal sex with me? I don't want to take 10 steps back in my recovery, but I can't help but think, is this really what I have to deal with for the rest of my marriage? Amanda Middle. 0 likes. As I read your stories, I can't help but cry. After lies upon lies, my husband has finally admitted to being addicted to porn and sexting other women. He swears up and down that he hasn't slept with anyone, but I'm not sure if I believe him or not. He's lied to me about so much for so long. I first had suspicions that he may have a problem about 6 months before we got married. I went through his email and found some very explicit emails he had sent responding to personal ads on Craigslist. These emails had been sent months before I discovered them. When I confronted him with it, he seemed very remorseful and told me he didn't why he had done it, but it was a one-time thing. He promised he would never do it again. I believed him. After all, he was the man of my dreams. About a week before our wedding, I started seeing this number I don't recognize on the phone bill. He had been texting back and forth with this number several times a day. When I went through his phone, all of the texts to and from that number had been deleted. I did some research and found out it was his son's mom's old roommate, which happened to be one of the girls who was in our wedding cousin. I confided in her and told her off my suspicions. She asked her cousin about and she said they were texting about the kids. I believed that too. After all, she knew he was getting married and her best friend was the mother of his son. I never confronted him about that. The texting between those two stopped. On my birthday, he didn't even get me a card. I was devastated. He picked a fight with me later that night and left for about an hour. A few days later, I saw he had been texting with her the day of my birthday. I wanted to crawl in a hole and die. I still didn't confront him about it. I think I was just scared to know the truth. All of the texting stopped for a while, but I began to notice he was using a lot of data on the phone. When I looked in his history to see how he could have used much, it was all porn and Craigslist. This time I confronted him. He tried to justify it by saying every guy watches porn. That may be true, but they definitely don't watch it multiple times a day and they sure as hell aren't on Craigslist looking at the personal ads. He denied being on Craigslist at all. I searched through his email, but couldn't find anything. He had deleted all of his sent mail and trash. I tried to forgive him and move on. He just got better and better at hiding it. He was constantly deleting his browsing history, emails, text messages, etc. This made me feel like he was hiding even more. Everything I would confront him about it, he would turn it around on me and tell me how crazy I was and how he couldn't understand why I didn't trust him. Hello. You've done it before and continue to it. Now you just lie to me about it. About a month ago he was acting very different. Something told me to check his Facebook. He was sitting out on the porch at the time. I got on his tablet. Lo and behold, he was messaging a girl at that exact time, telling her he wanted to sleep her and had for a long time. When she said something about him being married, all he said was, "Yeah, so, that doesn't mean can't do what I know we both want to." I was completely devastated as I sat there and watched as they continued to message each other. This continued for a few days, with him constantly deleting the messages so I wouldn't see them. I don't confront him right away. A couple of days later, I confronted him. Of course he denied it. He said somebody hacked his Facebook and sent them and that's why he deleted it. I couldn't believe he would continue to try to lie to even when I told him I saw everything. I let that go too and tried to forgive and forget. This past weekend, everything blew up. I noticed he was texting another number I didn't recognize while I was at work. This time there were pictures sent too. I went through his phone and the messages were deleted and there were no pictures in his phone. When he went to work, I called the number. It was some girl. I confronted him yet again. He tried lying about again. He said it was a guy from school. We fought and fought. He finally admitted to everything. He said he frequently sexts other girls because there's not enough spice in our relationship. When I asked him where he meets these girls, he said everywhere. I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. After all of the screaming, fighting and crying, he said he doesn't know how to stop. This is a problem he's had for years and he tried to quit before but always to go back to it. He has apologized for hurting me, but refuses to get any help for it. I've asked him before to go to counseling and he's refused. He said he would rather get divorced than see anyone for his addiction. I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do anymore. I love my husband, but I don't deserve to live in constant fear wondering if he's giving other women the attention he should be giving me. I don't know how to help either one of us at this point. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Holding middle. 0 likes. As I read these posts my heart breaks. Each of us is living a life we never dreamed and feeling so lonely. I often wonder if there is healing at the end of this crazy road. My road began on a brisk afternoon in February 2010. Not yet saved, I married for the second time to a man I thought was going to be my new happy. We both had children from prior relationships, but we love our kids and welcome this beautiful blended family experience. He moved to us where I am after we got married. We soon became saved and spent daily time in the Word. What bliss there was in ignorance. The more I read the Word, it seemed God put on my heart the sin of my hubby's pornography. I didn't know how awful it was until the light was turned on, but once I did I was convicted. My husband believes it's not cheating but Matthew 5:28 says otherwise. Let's just say that's when the gates opened up. We had two different perspectives and the battle for our marriage began. It was awful. He was so mean to me with his words and his actions. I threatened to leave so many times. Yet, God somehow intervened and we lived to fight another day. With each fight, the wound got deeper and deeper. Each lustful glance and pleasurable indulgence he took cut me once more. After years of tears, verbal abuse, multiple counselors, and countless prayers there seemed to be hope. We found a good Christian counselor who could relate to my husband's bondage. My husband actually liked the guy, too. Praise Jesus. We even started leading a youth group each week. It felt like God was moving mountains. Yet, over the months, the addiction got worse. Maybe because my control got tighter. I didn't know what to do. He looked at pornography every second he got. I feel inadequate, ugly, fat, used, and unwanted. It seems I'm only good for cooking, cleaning, and helping take care of him as if he were a child I needed to take care of. Sex became a need every month or so with the lights off and absolutely no love. I cried almost daily asking God to give me a godly husband who loved selflessly and was completely enraptured with my love. Prov 5:19. I so desperately want to know what Christ's love for the church felt like by living it out in my marriage. After years of pain and torment, it seemed we had a miracle. 1 month ago my husband left for the weekend to indulge in pornography after I caught him yet again and confronted him. Needless to say, he called me awful names and stormed out without telling me anything. He later told me he bought a tablet so I wouldn't know the data usage and he went to town with all the fantasies and desires he could get his hands on, no pun intended. He was in his happy place. And I was at home, on my knees crying out to God pleading to him to help. Again I was the one in pain, the one in prayer, the one seeking healing. My husband called the next day and asked to meet for lunch. He told me God came through and healed him. He saw just how awful the sin was and felt sorry for these women. He said he had new eyes. Oh, how I wanted to believe. And for 2 weeks, it seemed to be true. He seemed light and happy. But the next fight we had, he returned to pornography. And as the Bible says, it came back 7 times worse. My husband now is consumed by porn, and because it's blocked at home he is going crazy for the stuff. He says he wants to look at what he wants. He says he's struggling with God. He wonders if Jesus is just some fairy tale. He says he doesn't even know if he wants to teach the youth anymore. Life is empty without intimacy. I'm dying inside. I pray for a miracle, a healing, I hope because God promises not to harm me, but oh Lord, I am losing the fight within me to keep going. I've prayed. I pleaded. I've hoped, and yet there is no end in sight. My husband, it seems, has chosen to worship his idol over the living God. For him, sin is easier and more enjoyable than a life lived for the Lord. It breaks my heart. And I feel so alone. I can't tell anyone. I have no one to talk to, nowhere to turn. Ladies of this anonymous abyss, you're all I have. My heart breaks for yours because I know the pain too well. If I could have one prayer answered, it would be that each of you precious sisters in Christ finds healing in your hearts, in your marriages and in your families. I pray that the Lord Jesus casts the demons out and binds them so they never return. I pray that your man is filled to overflowing with love for Jesus and for you. I pray that you experience intimacy as He designed it, and I pray you can take the healing and help others find it, too. It's with all the love left in me that I pray these things over you. Ricky Middle. 0 likes. Are there any success stories out there? I just want to snatch up my son and run away. Am I fooling myself that there may be a light at the end of this traumatic, pathetic, deceptive tunnel? Can a masturbation addict recover? Ella Hutchinson LPC Middle. 0 likes. Yes, there are many success stories. People that come to these support sites are the ones in pain, desperately seeking help. The ones doing well are out enjoying their lives. So know that while what you read here is all too common, it is not necessarily representative of everyone who goes through this. Miranda Middle. 0 likes. About a week and a half ago I found out my husband has been lying about his sex addiction. Until then I thought he had a handle on it. We had went to counseling and things seemed so great between us. Then I find his Google Plus page and see the chats he has going, pictures exchanged. From what I can tell, it is all online. However, if he kept this well hidden for almost a year, what else is he capable of? He seems remorseful and says he wants to change. He told me I could have his electronics, he would get a new job, as he goes away for 10 weeks and is home for 10 weeks. I think of these as band-aid solutions. However, should I give him another chance? I think this would be at least number 5 in our 11-year relationship. I believe everyone is capable of change, and it must come from within. Is he ready? Is this his come to Jesus moment? He is currently away and is scheduled to return in 12 days. I have had countless nights of little sleep, bad dreams, I don't eat as much. I think, can I do this again? He tells me, I am what he wants for his future. The worst part is, all I can think about it the fact that I haven't had sex in over 8 weeks. Now I wonder, would it hurt our relationship more if we have sex when he gets home? I want him to recover, and I don't want to ruin that chance by him thinking he got away with it, but I have my own sexual needs as well. I am so mad. I want a marriage where I don't need to worry about thinking this way. Please give me some advice. Sonia Middle. 0 likes. I've just stumbled on this site and have just identified my husband as a sex addict, whereas before I thought serial cheater. Married for 20 years, we have a teenage son and everything we need to lead a wonderful life. We are comfortably well off and well traveled with fulfilling jobs. As many other women here say about their husbands, everyone loves my husband. He is warm, personable, and approachable, and they all think what a nice guy. Women feel they can tell him anything and he listens and can empathize and advise, which is quite flattering to any woman. But that's where the niceness ends. I have been suspicious about affairs and sex liaisons for many years, until 6 years ago when he had a full-blown affair in another country. Or as he explained, it wasn't really an affair but a liaison that got out of hand and he couldn't control it anymore. I was in shock, my whole world turned upside down. I filed for a divorce. He wrote to the courts that he wanted to save his marriage and together we would sort it out. In my hopelessness and pain I wanted that too and dropped the file. To my regret, I have now found out that it's not about affairs, it's about casual sex with any woman out there. He travels constantly in his job, so it's usually the receptionist in the hotel, the attractive woman who works in a bar, and very worryingly now we're living temporarily in Asia. I suspect it's the legit sex workers in this region. He also invites women on holiday with him whilst pretending to be on business trips. He gets alarmingly angry if I try to talk about any of this with him and accuses me of trying to control him. So a lot of what I know, and I now know a lot, I now keep to myself. I realize there is no point. I am about to file again for a divorce and will finish it this time. It will be devastating to our son, but what can I do? The stress of it all is now affecting my health. I am 53 and have reasonable fears of spending the rest of my life on my own, but to continue like this, I would certainly be shortening my years. I met him at age 28 and he has been my life. I feel angry too that I have given him the best years of my life, all for nothing, all for betrayal, lies over and over again. I am very sad, a bit depressed, but I try to stay strong. I am glad I found this site, as I will need support of other women in a similar situation. I now know that I am not alone and that the things I have been suspicious of for years are real concerns and not figments of my imagination as he would have me believe. Any comments would be appreciated. Ella Hutchinson LPC middle. 0 likes. I am reading so many tragic comments here and I wish I could help all of you. I wish I could respond to every post, but I will comment on the last two, from Blocks and Rose. What I say will likely apply to many others. Blocks, I know the comments here and elsewhere online can be discouraging to say the least. I see stories of healing and recovery for couples in this situation all the time, but I admit they are in the minority. Addicts who are willing to do an intensive with Jeff and me are already in the minority and have a higher chance of recovery simply because their willingness to do this, full disclosure and polygraph especially, shows the motivation that is necessary for success in recovery. While I am aware that the addicts I work with are often more highly motivated for change, I frequently receive emails and phone calls from women who are in situations that are not so hopeful. I also see plenty of women like this in my office. I know the reality for many is that their husband will not change, or at least not anytime soon, due to his lack of willingness to reach out for help. So Blocks, there is certainly hope for many couples to recover. As I have said before, those who are not doing well are more likely to come online seeking help and post on forums like this. I want to respond to this part of your post. When should I make my disunion to commit or leave? What would I see in his actions? How much counseling and group sessions? I saw on one post something about intimacy once they are in recovery. What is the definition of that? What would you see him doing to say he is in recovery? I hear you asking, what should recovery look like? While there isn't a one-size-fits-all recovery plan, there are some things that I believe all addicts should be doing for recovery. This includes a minimum of 2 weekly 12-step meetings as well as actively working with a sponsor and working the steps. Checking in regularly with accountability partners, ideally daily, is also important. Counseling is important, although recovery can take place for some without it. However, unless counseling is financially impossible, this should also be part of recovery. The right counselor is trained and experienced in working with sex addiction, or at least willing to learn, for those living in remote areas without a sex addiction therapist in driving distance. In my opinion, a good therapist should have read, or at least be open and willing to read, these 3 books: Stop Sex Addiction by Milton McNeice, Out of the Shadows by Patrick Carnes. I am not a supporter of Carnes' co-addict model, but this is a great book for understanding sex addiction, and Your Sexually Addicted Spouse by Barb Steffens and Marsha Means. An addict in recovery should also be more than willing to read the above books as well as other books about recovery. Beyond all this, you should begin to see changes in his personality. How he treats you and others can be an indicator of where he is in his recovery. Increasing amounts of patience and empathy should be present, although this often happens slowly while working with the right counselor. Disclosure is a very important part of recovery and should be done with a counselor present after there has been some prep work for both partners. Ideally, the counselor present should be the couple's counselor or the wife's counselor, not the addict's counselor unless the wife's counselor is also present. I strongly believe that a disclosure will not be thorough in over 90% of cases, without a polygraph. An addict in real recovery will be willing to do a disclosure. I hope this answers your question. The book Stop Sex Addiction goes into much more detail about what recovery should look like, and I strongly recommend it. Rose Middle. 0 likes. I am in desperate pain. I just recently had an awakening that my husband is a sex addict. He's been involved in pornography all of our 9-year marriage, but I didn't realize how much. I was in counseling after he had an affair last year, and so was he. I was getting great help from the counselor, and that at my suggestion, he began seeing my counselor for his individual as well, because she was really good. When he started seeing her, everything changed. She started telling me I had a lot more to work on. And then she'd say I couldn't handle what he was telling her. And she'd tell him not to tell me anything. I knew something was being hidden from me but didn't know what. Finally he saw that we were being pitted against each other, after she was attacking me in his presence and demanding that I work on my anger issues, even when I told her I'm not there. I'm in shock from realizing he is a sex addict. He was still using porn after promise and promise and promise. Last night I told him I wanted full disclosure. He said that's a horrible idea, he needs time to prepare it and wants to do it with a counselor. I am terrified of counselors now, and besides, it will take us months to find a decent counselor that I can trust and build rapport with now. He is a mental health counselor, Christian, which makes it worse. He talks to me in counselor speak when he feels like it and chides me for not using I statements and other such nonsense. At least it's nonsense when it is coming from someone who is doing the insane behaviors he is doing. He finally agreed to do the disclosure with me last night, and then I learned he had masturbated while thinking about my best friend at least 10 times. And my other friend. My best friend was my only support in this after losing the counselor, and the other friend was someone I just told him the other day I was thinking of bringing into my circle of support. Things went crazy last night when I found out about that part. I never imagined my only support would actually be a part of the disclosure. Now I feel like I can't tell my best friend anything, and I feel so trapped. I got in his face last night and wouldn't leave him alone, and he yelled so loudly so many times I'm sure my daughter heard it. And then I got angry and hit a Dixie cup that was sitting on the table full of water, and the water got all over him. He kicked me in the side as hard as he could. I didn't stop. I couldn't bear the pain of bringing my friends into the madness. He threw my phone against the wall and smashed it. He tried to leave, but I sat in the car so he couldn't, because when he leaves he smokes cigarettes, stays in a seedy motel, and masturbates or looks at porn. Then I have to explain to my kids where he is. I have no idea where to turn. I want to tell my friend so she can continue to support me, but I am afraid that will hurt her and hurt me and my husband in the long run. My support has dried up. I love God but don't know where he is right now. Ella Hutchinson LPC Middle. 0 likes. Rose, I am so sorry for your experience with your counselor. I wouldn't even know where to start in addressing the numerous mistakes that were made on her part. It really is appalling. It sounds like, to say the least, she was in over her head but not willing to admit it and refer you all to someone with the right expertise and experience. She was right about one thing, although she handled the situation terribly, you should never try to sit down and do a disclosure on your own. There are numerous reasons for this, but the biggest one is that you simply won't get the truth. You might get a little bit of truth, mixed in with lies and half-truths. Just what your husband thinks will appease you and help clear his conscience a little. There are exceptions to this. I have seen addicts who really did tell their spouse most of their acting out, usually over the period of months or years, but I can count them on one hand. While you deserve the truth no matter what, your husband will most likely not be willing to do a real disclosure unless he is in recovery. See above for a general idea of what that should look like. If he isn't in recovery, any disclosure that is done won't be complete. About the revelation of masturbating to your friends. I am so sorry for how painful this must feel. Sadly, this is not rare. The only difference between you and most of your friends' marriages might be that you are aware of this fact. Lust is a struggle all men have, not that I am condoning your husband's behavior in any way, and men fantasize about all kinds of things when they masturbate. Because of this, my opinion is that sobriety from sexual addiction includes stopping masturbation. This particular revelation does not concern me, although I get that it is extremely hurtful to you. Your friend can still be part of your support system without knowing every detail. On the other hand, if she has become a trigger for you right now, you may have to rely on support elsewhere for now. What does concern me is the interactions between you and your husband. It sounds like your relationship is quite chaotic and volatile right now. I wonder if it might be safer to separate for a while. At the same time, getting help from a professional would be a good idea. I know you have been burned, and finding a new counselor is a scary idea. It often does take a couple tries before you find the right counselor for you, but when you do, it is worth it. Rose Middle. 0 likes. Ella, thank you so much for your reply. The issue of my friend was by no means the only or most disturbing of the things he shared with me during the disclosure, but for some reason it has bothered me more than almost anything else. Thankfully, the Lord is helping me make some sense of things. I am still in that place of my eyes opening up, seeing this monster for what it really is. I'm beginning to see that what he is really dealing with is an addiction to shame. The acting out behaviors, of which there are plenty, are really only the tip of the iceberg. Thankfully, things have calmed down here some. He wants help and I want help. I see that this is going to be a very fine line to follow. The fine line is where God is. I have to remain firm that I cannot do this for him, whereas my tendency is to want to control things, and fix things, yet I have to remain pliable and truthful enough to realize I am his greatest human ally. I finally get that I can't change it, but it's sticky business to stay in a place where he can't try to drag me down by expecting me to fix it because he is being too passive to do the work. But at the same time, being cold or too pointed, at the wrong moments, about my pain, just adds to the shame that he needs to escape. Here is the example I thought of this morning. I was in a hurry to get to church and realized my toenail polish looked awful. I threw on another coat and grabbed my shoes. From experience, I knew I better just get in the car barefoot and wait for the polish to dry. But I didn't want to wait. So I carefully tried to put my shoes on without touching them to the polish. Fail. Smudged right away. Had to take off shoes and redo polish, not exactly helping with the hurry up and get to church thing. That time, I just got in the car and drove barefoot. Seems similar with my husband. I want to be able to fully belt him with my hurt and my anger. I want him to get it and take it and fully be caring and take responsibility. But since his real trouble is shame, and since he hasn't had any real training yet in how to care for me through this, he just falls down, down, down. Back into the pit of shame, exactly where I don't want him to be when I unleash on him. Or sometimes with just a few pointed comments. No matter how much I wish he was in a place to receive everything I've got to throw at him. He's just not hard and cured yet, just like the nail polish. I have to be patient and wait. Anyone have experience with this? Can you give any tips about this? How to remain gentle and available and loving, yet at the same time guarding your heart, keeping enough distance so he realized I am no longer available for you to live through me. He must do it on his own. Hard to even put into words. Praising God for some peace and progress. We are considering the 3-day intensive with Dr. McNeese. BKL Middle. 0 likes. I am in desperate pain. I just recently had an awakening that my husband is a sex addict. He's been involved in pornography all of our 9-year marriage, but I didn't realize how much. I was in counseling after he had an affair last year, and so was he. I was getting great help from the counselor, and that at my suggestion, he began seeing my counselor for his individual as well, because she was really good. When he started seeing her, everything changed. She started telling me I had a lot more to work on. And then she'd say I couldn't handle what he was telling her. And she'd tell him not to tell me anything. I knew something was being hidden from me but didn't know what. Finally he saw that we were being pitted against each other, after she was attacking me in his presence and demanding that I work on my anger issues, even when I told her I'm not there. I'm in shock from realizing he is a sex addict. He was still using porn after promise and promise and promise. Last night I told him I wanted full disclosure. He said that's a horrible idea, he needs time to prepare it and wants to do it with a counselor. I am terrified of counselors now, and besides, it will take us months to find a decent counselor that I can trust and build rapport with now. He is a mental health counselor, Christian, which makes it worse. He talks to me in counselor speak when he feels like it and chides me for not using I statements and other such nonsense. At least it's nonsense when it is coming from someone who is doing the insane behaviors he is doing. He finally agreed to do the disclosure with me last night, and then I learned he had masturbated while thinking about my best friend at least 10 times. And my other friend. My best friend was my only support in this after losing the counselor, and the other friend was someone I just told him the other day I was thinking of bringing into my circle of support. Things went crazy last night when I found out about that part. I never imagined my only support would actually be a part of the disclosure. Now I feel like I can't tell my best friend anything, and I feel so trapped. I got in his face last night and wouldn't leave him alone, and he yelled so loudly so many times I'm sure my daughter heard it. And then I got angry and hit a Dixie cup that was sitting on the table full of water, and the water got all over him. He kicked me in the side as hard as he could. I didn't stop, I couldn't bear the pain of bringing my friends into the madness. He threw my phone against the wall and smashed it. He tried to leave, but I sat in the car so he couldn't. Because when he leaves he smokes cigarettes, stays in a seedy motel, and masturbates or looks at porn. Then I have to explain to my kids where he is. I have no idea where to turn. I want to tell my friend so she can continue to support me, but I am afraid that will hurt her and hurt me and my husband in the long run. My support has dried up. I love God but don't know where he is right now. BKL0 likes. As much as I'm glad I've found this site, I'm really crushed by most of the posts. I was hoping for encouraging stories. I feel even more hopeless. I want my marriage to work. But I need help. I don't know where to turn. I have been married for 17 years. High school sweethearts. I got pregnant my senior year of school and we got married a few months after graduation. I came from a broken home. My husband had 2 loving parents. Our history. I was needy, wanted to please and desperate for love. My husband and I had broken up for a short time. He said he wanted to marry me, but wanted a right relationship with God first. But this statement was inconsistent with his actions. He was hanging with other girls, I was desperately fighting for his attention, and he ended up sleeping with 2 different girls. He called me immediately and confessed. I was devastated. I was done with him. 3 weeks later I find out I'm pregnant. I feared having my son alone, with having no healing from his actions. He justified his actions, saying we were broken up. I accepted him as my marriage partner. My husband took responsibility, worked hard, entered the military, and really took responsibility of his young family. But married life was hard. He was angry, mourned the loss of his youth. His mom was hard to be around. And he would never marry someone who would be like her. With that, most of my boundaries and requests went unheard. He looked at porn, flirted a lot. But I thought it was harmless, even though it hurt. The military life was hard. Quickly we had 3 kids, all by the time I was 21. At times we hated each other. But he was still committed to us. We were very ill-equipped on proper fighting and boundaries. The fighting got worse with money issues and stress of being such a young family. While he was away on a deployment, I lived with his family. And quickly saw a much different picture than I thought of his parents. His mother berated me and seemed to sabotage my relationship with my kids and my husband. I asked for him to stand up for me. But being young, that was hard. I was fighting postpartum and taking medications that left me numb to everything, and quickly I wanted out. I made some rather poor choices myself, cheating, thinking I was never staying in this marriage. My infidelity was broadcasted and even recorded by my mother-in-law in an attempt to get my kids and ultimate have her son divorce me. I